Good evening, gamers. El Sicko here. Pardon me, my voice is completely trash. I just want to talk about accessibility options in Dead by Daylight. Now, this is a topic that is not super close to my heart because I am privileged to be somebody who just doesn't really suffer from any issues like this. I have a friend who can't play most first-person shooters because certain FOVs just give him a headache. Dead by Daylight is an interesting case because there are a lot of challenges with including accessibility options in this game. However, I don't think that the developers should ignore it just because it's difficult. So before we get into DBD in particular, I want to talk a little bit about what I mean when I say accessibility, and I want to bring up some examples of accessibility in other video games. So as far as this discussion video is concerned, when I say accessibility, I want to talk about making the game more playable and accessible for people with disabilities, for people with sensory sensitivities or triggers, and people with specific phobias. Now, when I say disabilities, that can mean visual impairment, hearing impairment, that could be a motor impairment. That's a bit more of a difficult topic, but I'll touch on some ideas there. I do want to give some credit to Shy TTV for sort of bringing this topic to my attention just because I've seen her tweet about it on Twitter, and I think that it's an interesting discussion. And I've been combative about it. I'm not just 100% like, I'm not always 100% for every idea that she's talked about. I've been sort of challenging on these discussions, and she can, you know, if she sees this video, she can probably vouch for that. But I'm only being difficult because I'm sort of perceiving the challenges that come with trying to make the game more inclusive. My opinions on that, I'll leave that till the end of the video because honestly, it's the least important stuff. So let's quickly go over some examples of accessibility in other video games. I'm only going to talk about a handful. The Last of Us 2 is basically a masterclass in accessibility. There are a ton of options. There are high contrast visual options for the visually impaired. There are subtitles and visual indicators for the hearing impaired. There are gameplay modifications for people with motor difficulties. There's one option where if you stay prone, enemies just can't see you.
You can play this with your eyes closed, and you can still be able to complete the game. Like, that's how in depth the audio is in this. There are audio cues that tells you which button to push. Also, what even the object you are interacting with. It gives you a sound effect of what that object is that you're about to interact with.
Square button, scan for enemies. Circle button, scan for items.
So of course there are certain things that Dead by Daylight can't do because it's not a single player game. So like, for example, The Last of Us 2, you can change the game speed. You can literally make the game run at 50% speed if you have, you know, if that makes the game more accessible to you. That's not exactly possible on a live service, like a PvP online live game. However, there are still things that we can learn from The Last of Us 2 that I think we can apply here. Now let's move on to Phobia Filters. I'm not too familiar with what other Phobia Filters exist in other games, but the immediate ones that came to mind were Grounded, and it turns out Lethal Company has the same thing. Things like Plague vomiting with the sound effects. I was talking about Dredge, Doctor, Clown, that sort of thing. So fair warning for anybody who is bothered by these things. I'm gonna show them in the video because of examples and also because I want to make the video funny. Grounded is a game where you play a like George Shrink's like tiny person, and you fight insects and bugs and stuff, right? So that includes spiders. Now, I'm an arachnophobe. I used to be afraid of Minecraft spiders. I'm not even joking. As a teenager, I was afraid of Minecraft spiders. I'm not even gonna freaking lie to you, okay? So the Phobia filter in Grounded makes the spiders less spidery the more you crank it. So first it'll change them from 8 legs to 6 legs, and then eventually like 4 legs, and then eventually they'll just be a cute ball with 2 eyes. Like it won't even represent a spider anymore. And then here's Lethal Company, where I guess it's an on and off option. If you turn the arachnophobia option on, it just the model for a spider just becomes the word spider, which is kind of amazing.
Oh, spiders! Spiders! Get them off me! Get them off me! Get them off me!
Now we understand that Dead by Daylight is a horror game, but we still want to like be inclusive to those people. You can play a horror game, like for me, I'm not a big fan of jump scares, so I would be a fan of, like, if I could play a horror game and there was a filter where it's like, hey, can I just make sure jump scares are not super loud? Like, if you've ever played a puppet combo game, you know what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like,
yeah, banger alert, by the way. Banger alert! Oh!
I can handle jump scares. I just don't want to be fucking deaf at the end of it, all right? And it's not that I don't want the game to be scary. I just have preferences that I don't think I'm asking for too much. So if somebody in Dead by Daylight's like, listen, I want to play a game with horror themes and scary creatures, but there are just certain things that I can't deal with.
Some of these people suffer from emetophobia, which is an extreme fear of vomiting or seeing vomit. I'm not someone who suffers from this myself, but I still have to play against Plague completely muted because the sound of survivors vomiting makes me feel sick, and it's honestly just very unbearable for me.
So the first thing she mentions is Plague, emetophobia. Is that how fucking you say that? Hold on, how do you say that?
Emetophobia.
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 Emetophobia. Emetophobia.
Okay, so it's emetophobia. So this is like the people who are triggered by like vomiting and such. So Shy TTV proposes an option to change the noise and an option to change the vomit color, and also having a visual cue for sound effects. So because DBD, noise is kind of a gameplay feature, like visual noise and audio noise, auditory noise is a feature. It's not quite ideal to just remove the sound effect. Like, instead of just removing Plague sound effects, you'd want to replace it with something that can, as like a placeholder, where it still serves a gameplay purpose. It still crowds the audio. It still crowds the audible space, but it doesn't have to sound like Plague vomiting. I know a lot of people, my girlfriend included, really didn't like the sound effect of Plague. If you hold your M2 and then you stop it, she does, like, the noise of Plague swallowing her own vomit is disgusting. I think me just saying those words is gonna be triggering to some viewers. Wait, hold on. Where's that?
It's like 90 degrees.
Ooh. You all right?
Lauren, what's going on with you? God.
Nope.
So I appreciated Shy TTV like laying out these sort of ideas, but I wanted to sort of make mock-ups of these ideas. So here are some examples of alternate colors for Plague vomit. I'm not the best photo editor, so this is not the best like representation of it, but it's what I could do. All right, here's an example of an alternate sound effect font that Plague could use. So Shy TTV also talks about people complaining about the Nightfall ambient sound effect for Dredge. He loses his terror radius and you hear like a creepy, like a chorus of ghostly victims like crying and screaming in despair. It's kind of freaky. It's cool. It's amazing in terms of horror and like storytelling via gameplay. However, there are people who are triggered by this sort of thing. Maybe they have PTSD, maybe, whatever. The important thing is you don't have to justify your reasoning for like, I dislike this, I can't deal with this. There should not have to be a justification. If somebody has an issue with it, they have an issue with it, and I'm just going to talk about it. So again, it's the thing where the challenge is that you can't just mute it because the noise is part of the intended gameplay mechanic. So you'd have to replace the audio with something else. Now, this isn't the best example, but here you go. Shy also brings up the idea of Dr. Shocks creating a visual effect that is uncomfortable for certain viewers or certain players. I think a lot of people have complained about Clown in this regard as well, and that's totally valid. Also Knockout. So again, it's one of those things where there's supposed to be a degree of visual impairment at play. So you can't just remove it, you'd have to replace it with something else. So as a mock-up here, I've done an alternative to Like here's an example of clown bottles hitting me as Ada, and then here's an example of what I suppose you could do as an alternative. Instead of having a visual impairment, you could just do like a letterbox effect that reduces your visibility. So like it will still be it would still impair your ability to see, which is an intended effect, but it will be in a way that's less obnoxious visually.
Have a toggleable option to mute survivor screams. Screams can be pretty overwhelming and very piercing and loud.
We can also make an alternative for people who have issues with scream sound effects or certain sound effects. I've also included context subtitles as an addition. This is kind of like something that like Minecraft has. A lot of games have it, but I know Minecraft has it where like if like a zombie makes a noise nearby, it'll tell you in subtitles like, oh, zombie groans. Or if a skeleton, like, you know, it's just ideas for people who maybe can't hear as well. Or maybe, you know, they just don't have headphones that are playing at night. They don't want to wake anybody up. Like, there's a lot of reasons to have these effects. But anyway, here you go. Shy brings up the example of flashlights being quite difficult for some people to deal with, and I agree, especially if you're playing in the dark. The flashlight effect can be ridiculous.
What the
So to change that that visual, I would have no issues with an option to change that visual. The idea is just that the person being blind should just lose vision. It doesn't mean that it has to be bright yellow flashlight in your face. Thankfully, Dead by Daylight's sound design is pretty good as far as finding objectives goes. Like, if a generator has progress, you can hear it, and directionally you could find it. The sound design is pretty good at that. There are some issues, I think, with certain objects and walls where they don't occlude properly. But I think we can also do things like include visual indicators for certain sounds. Like, okay, here's a nearby generator. Let me just show you an indicator where that is. Dead by Daylight Mobile does this already, actually, for generators anyway. But he can do other things too, like, you know, certain killer sound effects that the player needs to be aware of. In case a player has hearing impairment, I think I wouldn't be against the idea of including some visual options, like a visual indicator of what direction that's coming from. Even like spirit phasing, if it was just a left-right indicator of whether spirit's phasing was on your left or on your right, and maybe a general distance indicator, I wouldn't be against that either. Lastly, challenges and opinions. So this is something that I've had a lot of time to think about. I've been working on this video on and off for about 2 or 3 weeks now in terms of gathering my thoughts and kind of, you know, coming up with the mock-ups and what I could represent visually. There is a valid concern if someone's like, okay, in real life, you have accessibility options, the world should be equitable. However, you have to prove that you have a disability or something to qualify for that option, but in a video game that doesn't exist. You can just use it, whatever. One example that I thought of was The Last of Us 2 has its roguelike mode, and every day there's a daily challenge, and you get scored the same way whether or not you're using the accessibility options, which can basically turn the game into a cakewalk if you activate all the right ones. Like,
you can just do this. Where'd I go? Huh? But then slow motion aiming. Boom. And now I'm still invisible. Oh, slow motion aiming. Boom. Accessibilities like these are good for the game and stuff, and it's groundbreaking, it's award-winning, I love it. But you just saw I was basically able to cheat. Problem is, for the daily challenge, someone who's not going to use those things is obviously not going to be able to put up as good a run or score as someone who is going to use them. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. You can kind of cheese your way through the daily runs, and because the leaderboards aren't very specific, you don't exactly know who did that and who didn't.
But my overall opinion that has come down to is who gives a shit? Who cares? People in Dead by Daylight love to tell you how to play anyway. People get mad about reshades. People get mad about, we had stretched res as an issue for a while. Yeah, who gives a shit? Who fucking cares if whatever you use? Because most people are cool, all right? You just hear from the minority, like the small group of people who are not cool because they're the loudest group. And there's people who are going to give you shit for everything. People are going to give you shit for picking Trapper, all right? People are going to give you shit for using Unrelenting. It doesn't matter, all right? Do whatever you want. Use whatever you want. These options, at least that I've mentioned, don't really give you like that much of an advantage anyway. I was even like, I haven't made a mock-up for it because it's not like super, like I just haven't made a mock-up for it. But like I would even propose like an auto loop option where if you're in chase, you can hit a button and you become a bot for a bit, but you have to hit the vault buttons and the pallet buttons for that to work. And then you could just turn that off at will. Because, just to make the game easier for people who maybe don't know how to loop or they're new to the game or, maybe they have a motor challenge. Because again, like if you're good at the game, that's not going to be a problem. And again, for killers, it's a little different. That's more of a challenge. But like, again, if that option existed, if somebody was like auto looping against me, they became, I don't give a shit. Whatever, do whatever you want. I genuinely don't care. All right. If I'm playing killer, I'm going to be the better player. I'm going to kick your ass anyway. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, again, this is just like scratching the surface of accessibility in Dead by Daylight. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear if there's anybody watching who's more of an expert on the subject or if they have specific needs or specific challenges. I would love to hear more about that. But yeah, that's basically it. Have a great day and don't gatekeep. I'm dying. I'm fucking dying. Revolutionizing DBD shit while my viewers eclipse on your TTV clips. I am back. No need for crutch perks, blood rush and flush nerds. My mega buster, clap on you rats. Killer Q and I got the urge, and you gonna feel the scourge. Whether the floods of rage or gift of pain, Vommy mommy, you got.